Hi, my name is Evan Smith. I'm the Advocacy Director at AppalReD Legal Aid. We're the civil legal aid organization that covers 37 counties in eastern and south central Kentucky. And what we want to talk with you all about is the disaster legal services that we're providing in wake of the horrendous floods that happened here just a couple weeks ago. And a lot of people are going through the disaster process and trying to figure out what legal rights they have, how to navigate the FEMA process, etc. And so to help people in our region understand this, I wanted to have a conversation with two of my colleagues who work at a similar organization that covers Western Kentucky. As a lot of you all probably know, back in December, they had some really devastating tornadoes out in Western Kentucky. And so they're Katina and Kristy at Kentucky Legal Aid, which covers the counties that were affected out there. They ended up having lots of firsthand experience helping people who were affected with their legal rights that were involved. And so we're just going to do this in a question and answer format and try to address what might be some common questions that people in Eastern Kentucky have and see what our friends in Western Kentucky have learned and how they can help you all navigate that process. Before I launch into the questions, though, I'll allow both Katina and Kristy to introduce themselves.
Hi,
Hi,
my
everyone.
name. Oh, sorry, we were going to tag team and then I'm
You're
just
good.
talking over. Hi, my name is Kristy Vick-Stratton. I am currently the lead disaster response attorney for Kentucky Legal Aid. We didn't have this position before the December tornadoes, and after that happened, we realized the importance of making sure that we could respond to the legal needs of the community for those impacted by disaster. So that is my role here at Kentucky Legal Aid.
And Kristy, sorry for speaking over you. Evan, thanks so much for inviting us to speak. Today, we're happy to be here. I'm down the hall from Kristy in our Bowling Green office of Kentucky Legal Aid, and I have the same position as Evan, but in the other organization. So I'm the Advocacy Director here. And like Evan said, we serve 35 counties in South Central and Western Kentucky. And I think it was 15 out of the 16 disaster impacted counties fall within our service area. So we can't pretend to understand what everybody dealing with the aftermath of the floods is dealing with, but we hope that we can share a little bit of hope and some tips from our experience continuing to recover from the tornadoes.
Thanks so much. And I just want to put in, mention one thing before we get into the question and answer. So you should see at the top of this that there's a toll-free number. It's 844-478-0099. This is a hotline that we've set up at AppalReD Legal Aid in cooperation with the American Bar Association, the Kentucky Bar Association, and FEMA as a way to provide legal assistance for any problems that people in East Kentucky might have related to the flood. So feel free to call that. We'll have it staffed during business hours, Monday through Friday, generally 8 to 4:30. So please, I encourage you to call that. And the services that we provide are free. And, you know, we have a very broad view of what are legal problems that are flood related. So even if you're not sure that what you're dealing with is exactly a legal problem, give us a call. We've got staff that will talk through it with you and we can take it from there. And if there's something we can do, it's what we're here to do and we want to help. So now getting into some issues, the first big broad question, and Kristy, if you want to take this, that'd be fine, or whichever one. Who should apply for FEMA assistance?
So we have found that everyone should file for FEMA assistance, even if you don't think that you qualify or you may have insurance, which we'll talk about in just a minute in a little more detail. You should apply because that's going to open other pathways to resources or funds that you may be available to receive. So everyone should file a FEMA application. Even if you're denied, you should still file, you should still go through that process. And then remember that the deadline to apply for FEMA assistance is 60 days from the date of the FEMA declaration. So the FEMA disaster declaration, you have 60 days to apply. That may be extended. That's something that you would just have to watch for, but just know that everyone should apply for FEMA assistance, even if you don't think you need it, because it opens the pathway to other resources that may be available, even if you're denied.
Well, one related question about that deadline, should people wait gather more documents and wait until closer to the deadline, or should they go ahead and apply earlier, even if they don't have all the documents that they think FEMA might ask for?
I would say that they should go ahead and apply, and get that process started, get that conversation started. They may think that FEMA needs something that they may not need. And so if a document is needed, FEMA will send that to them and let them know like what additional information or what additional documentation is needed.
And does FEMA have income restrictions or guidelines for this type of individual assistance we're talking about?
No, there's not like an income cap or a wage cap, but people should be aware that FEMA programs can't duplicate benefits from insurance or from other agencies like nonprofits. Also, financial assistance from FEMA is limited and it might not return your home to a pre-disaster condition. So the goal for FEMA is to restore people to premises that are safe, sanitary, and habitable, basically. So an example that we would use is like you might have had a really nice, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to talk about this if somebody's missing it right now, but it's an example. You might have had a California king size bed that got destroyed in the floods. FEMA's not going to replace a bed of that size and that quality that you had before, but maybe they'll give you the money that they believe you would be able to use to get a serviceable bed that's probably a double, or something smaller. So just to go back to the answer of the questions, income guidelines, no, but they're not going to duplicate other assistance.
One other question that lots of people have had as they've been dealing with the immediate aftermath of this is, should people wait and clean up their property until the FEMA inspector comes out? Or how should people kind of think about this process of the FEMA inspection in relation to getting their property and their possessions into a more livable state?
So it would be ideal if people could wait until the FEMA inspector could be out there to assess everything. However, sometimes you have to take immediate steps to protect your property, to make it safe, to prevent further damage from happening. So you may need to start salvaging what you can now. I know there have been additional rains that have come into that area after the floods. So those steps that you need to take to secure your property, make it safe, try to salvage what you can. It is definitely okay to start that process even before a FEMA inspector can arrive. However, I would just say you want to document. So you want to take pictures, you want to take videos, you want to make lists. So of any of the work that you're doing, anything that's been damaged, anything that you've hauled away, just make sure that you have records of that so that you can show FEMA later. You can print those pictures out, you can email those photographs so that they understand what the steps that you took were to make your property safe and what you were trying to salvage when you took those steps. You can call FEMA, and that number, and I'm sure that you have lots of resources on your page, so I'll state that really quickly and we can repeat it again if needed, is 1-800-621 3362, and you can let them know that you've got to start taking these steps to clean up your property to prevent further damage from happening. So that's a step that you can take as well. But by all means, we want you to safeguard your property and do what you can to prevent further loss. So clean up what you need to. If you do have to take that step, just document. Otherwise, just wait for your FEMA inspector to arrive.
Okay, and what happens next if FEMA denies your claim?
One thing regarding inspection, sometimes people miss the inspection as well, because that can get scheduled. And if you're suddenly homeless or in a place without great cell reception or just dealing with a lot of immediate needs in the aftermath of a disaster, you might miss that inspection. I would say one thing you can do is appeal. Because it'll be called a voluntary withdrawal denial, most likely. You can appeal that. So that's one appeal. If FEMA denies your claim, that was your question, Evan. The first thing I think Kristy and I would say is don't give up. Review that denial letter carefully, and it will say, typically on the second page, what you need to do to file an appeal. And you'll have 60 days to file an appeal. The letter itself will set forth the deadlines and the process for filing an appeal. We've learned that obtaining FEMA funds can sometimes be a process in and of itself. A lot of times people get denied the first time because there hasn't been all the documentation, or maybe even some of the documentation you haven't been able to track down because your county courthouse is still closed or your documents were destroyed in the disaster. So be an advocate for yourself. Call folks like AppalReD if you want or need some help with that advocacy. And again, given that this is a process, it can be very useful as well to call FEMA and ask to speak with a representative for more information. Because when you get a denial letter from FEMA, those are typically kind of boilerplate form denials that will even have some codes on them and things that might not be readily understandable from the face of the letter. But if you were to call and speak with someone, they might be able to tell you what we're really missing here is this one document in the bullet point list. And then that would help you narrow it and provide what they need. So again, don't give up just because you've been denied. You have a right to appeal, and you've got wonderful folks at AppalReD and I'm sure other community agencies in Eastern Kentucky who can assist with that.
Thank you for that, Katina. Now, what if FEMA approves your claim, but doesn't approve you for as much as you think they should?
So most FEMA awards are based upon a formula, and there's a cap for what FEMA can do. And so if you have insurance, then FEMA is going to expect you first to look for your to your insurance for recovery of your property, repairs of damages, things like that. So if you have insurance, FEMA is going to expect you to exhaust your insurance option first. But there is $37,900 for housing and $37,900 for other needs. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone is automatically going to get the maximum for both of those amounts. And I just want to say that was the amount for the 2021 tornado. I believe that it's the same for those in Eastern Kentucky who have been impacted by the flooding, but I don't want to be locked into that amount if you find out from FEMA that the amount of assistance available to those impacted by the Eastern Kentucky flood is different. So this was for the Western Kentucky tornado total. So if you received, and I'm just going to throw some numbers out there, if you don't have insurance for the repairs of your home and FEMA sends you $2,000, but you find out that the roof repair is going to be $7,000, then you can appeal that FEMA award amount and provide them information from your contractor, from whoever's repairing your home, show them the cost of that, and then they may send you additional funds to cover that. But they are going to require documentation of why it's going to be more than that $2,000 amount that they gave you. So just know you can always appeal an amount that you receive if you don't believe it's high enough, or if you see after starting repairs it's not high enough to make those repairs or to replace that property. I do want to say that if someone has a disability and there are additional repairs needed to make their home compliant with what they need for their disability so that their needs are met, that is not going to be factored into that $37,900 amount. So for people with disabilities, that will be a little bit of a different number because the cost of repairs and what's needed is going to be a little different. Katina mentioned earlier, we want it to be safe, habitable, and so it's going to look different for every person. We very much encourage you to get independent contractors to also give you estimates on the repair of your home, just to ensure that, sometimes inspectors come in or contractors come in and they may not go in, as opposed to someone that you have giving you an estimate. They may come in and give you that differently, looking at different things than someone who's just coming in and assessing the outside and taking you at your word, or looking at a picture for what damage may look like on the inside. This this is something that you're going to want to do if you have insurance adjusters that you're working with as well, and contractors. You're always going to want to try to get your own, just to ensure no one is trying to do anything shady. Everyone is trying to help you all. They're trying to help everyone in Western Kentucky, but sometimes it's just like getting a second opinion at the doctor. It's okay to do that. So if you want a second opinion or a second contractor to look at things, an inspector to look at things, you should definitely do that. But always appeal if you don't feel like FEMA gave you as much as you should receive or what it's going to take, then just file that appeal.
Great. Thank you very much. And by the way, one thing that just earlier today I heard is that it sounds like FEMA has been issuing some $500 payments. And my understanding from that is that those are from what they call their critical needs assessment program, and that those emergency $500 payments are separate from, or at least maybe a small part of the bigger, $37,000 payments that potentially that Kristy was talking about. So if you recently got a $500 payment, don't think that that's all you'd be eligible for under FEMA. These two the letter sometimes from FEMA might not be clear that the larger claim is still in the process, but I'm glad to hear that FEMA is starting to get some cash in the hands of people here that need it. Now, we've mostly been talking about houses and personal possessions, that type of thing, but what about cars?
Yes, so FEMA can also assist with they call it transportation assistance. This is a form of other needs assistance, which is kind of FEMA verbiage. But you can apply for assistance to replace a vehicle that was damaged or destroyed. So make sure to answer those questions when you're filing your FEMA application to indicate that you've had damage to a vehicle or that it's been destroyed. And then in order to qualify, you would need to show that the damage happened in a disaster declared area, and then also that the vehicle was in compliance with state registration and insurance requirements, and owned or leased by the FEMA applicant, co-applicant, or a household member. In my experience working on these claims, a decent amount of documentation is required to prove to FEMA that it was your car, it was damaged, and you had the title and those types of things. So it might take more than one attempt to apply for FEMA transportation assistance, and an appeal might be necessary. This would be another one of those good times to call FEMA and ask for a little bit more clarity if you're struggling to provide the information that's required. But that should be available, and then I hope it will be available to folks that need it. And then I will also say our experience here in Western Kentucky is that over the months that we've been recovering, some other, and I hope this will happen in your area as well, some other community nonprofits have recognized this as a real need and have stepped up to assist people. I know you need it soon, so definitely apply for FEMA, but I hope that those additional sources of help will be available in your area.
Now, again, this conversation so far about FEMA has been great. To me, I like to loop around on the basic takeaways, and that is basically everyone should apply for FEMA. And if you don't feel like you're getting everything that FEMA should provide, you should appeal, whether that's a denial or an approval that's for less than what you think it should be. And we at AppalReD, we can help you, or we can connect you with some volunteer lawyers who might be able to help you. And the best way to get connected if you get any sort of FEMA denial is that toll-free number that should be on your screen, 844-478-0099. Now, one other acronym, and again, there's a lot of acronyms once you get into public benefits and disaster relief efforts, but there's some things about the SBA. Can you tell us what the SBA is and who should maybe apply for it if they have disaster-related impacts?
Yes, so SBA can be a little confusing because it stands for the Small Business Association, and those impacted by the disaster and their home may be damaged may not understand why they need to apply for a business loan when this is impacting their residents. And so this is just the agency that FEMA has partnered with to finance lower interest loans for individuals who have been impacted by disaster. And so that's just the acronym that everyone throws out, SBA. It stands for business, but just know if you've been impacted in your residence, you can also apply and should also apply for an SBA loan. Even if you have been denied other FEMA assistance, you are going to want to apply, and you may not even think that you need this loan, but you still want to apply because it can open the doors for other needs assistance. And so you want to make sure that you're not being disconnected or not being approved for other assistance that you may be eligible for because you don't apply for this SBA loan. So you're going to want to do that. And it can include replacing things such as personal property and transportation as well. But the primary focus may be on replacing the residence or repairing the residence. But just make sure that you do fill out that application, even if you think, oh, I don't have good credit, I'm not going to be approved. Even if that loan is denied, you have still opened up the door for those other resources to be considered for those. So you're going to want to make sure that you do that. It just kind of helps you keep your options open. You should be able to do this if you've got the disaster recovery center set up, and I know that you all have those in place now in Eastern Kentucky in different areas. You should be able to apply for SBA loans while you're there filling out all of your other documents as well.
So even if someone doesn't want a loan, they should apply to the SBA?
Yes, they should. It does open up the door for other assistance that they may qualify for.
Now, what about people who haven't been able to work at all or as much since the flood? Are there any kind of benefits that are there to replace lost wages?
Yes, there is a program that's administered through the Kentucky Office of Unemployment Insurance called Disaster Unemployment Assistance. The abbreviation is DUA. Again, one of those acronyms we've been talking about. In order to qualify for DUA, you have to have lived, worked, or be scheduled to work in a disaster declared area. And it's going to work similar to unemployment, regular unemployment assistance, where you'll be qualified for a weekly benefit amount that will be paid to you for as long as you are eligible. I believe certain waivers have already been put in place regarding being able and available to work and work search requirements. I think those waivers are in effect for your disaster. So I would encourage folks who need to apply for these benefits to get an application in. There will be a deadline for those as well. So better to apply sooner rather than later if you have any issues. I believe, Evan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that folks from the Office of Unemployment are at the disaster recovery centers at the local DRCs. And also, I looked it up before we got on this call. You can also apply by phone. The number is 502-875-0442. I'll put that in the chat later. Or you can apply online at kcc.ky.gov. So that's what's out there for lost wages.
Yeah, and I want to get to some of those questions that are in the comments and chat in just a minute. But while we're on the topic of these various acronyms that come up, are there any other public benefits programs that people should be aware of that are focused on, disaster situations?
Yes, so most people have heard of SNAP benefits. There's also something known as disaster SNAP benefits, or DSNAP, and that just provides eligible to moderate income households who do not normally receive SNAP benefits with help in buying groceries due to lost income or damages following a disaster. And then for those households already receiving SNAP benefits, it may be possible to request replacement benefits if the food that they purchased with SNAP benefits was destroyed during the disaster. Also, the SNAP agency has been working hard to seek waivers to help people facing hunger right now. For example, hot food purchase waivers. You can get prepared food if you're without power or a place to cook food. And I believe that is going to, right now it's scheduled to go through September the 2nd. So even if a household normally doesn't receive SNAP benefits during a disaster, there are those D-SNAP benefits that they may be eligible for.
Now, one concern that, there's always scams that come up in these disasters. Can you tell us about any scams that you all dealt with in Western Kentucky, and anything that people here in Eastern Kentucky should kind of be wary of?
Ooh, I'll let Kristy speak to that because she might know a little bit more since she's been taking more of the calls. But I will say that there are some unscrupulous contractors and folks that will come in to impacted areas looking for people who are in dire straits and offering to do work and not doing it up to par. Folks who are not licensed, folks who are not insured. So I don't know specifically how it will work in the different counties that are most impacted in Eastern Kentucky, but I would watch for information from your local government, demand, proof of insurance and contractor licensure requirements. And to the extent that you can, do some homework on whoever it is that you're hiring. I see in the chat too that some people had fake or false FEMA claims filed in their names, which is really just low. And I'm sorry, I did hear about that happening to folks. I think obviously file an appeal, make a record, document with FEMA. And I would suggest in a situation like that, contacting an agency like AppalReD for some more assistance and guidance. But Kristy, do you have other insight about the scam question?
So definitely, I think what I have seen the most would be individuals coming in offering to do home repairs at a lower cost or offering more services, repair services than they have the ability to do, coming in and doing shady work and then not following up again if the repair is not up to par. So I would just say, like Katina did, I'm going to echo that. Just do your homework. As frustrating and as exhausting as everything is right now, it's going to save you in the long run to make sure that someone is licensed and insured. Never, ever, no matter how much they sweet talk you and offer you discounts, pay anyone in advance for work. And I've seen that happen. And very smart people, it happens to everyone that you are someone is coming in, they seem very trustworthy, they want to help you, and you are so desperate for that help, and it just seems wonderful and you trust them. Never ever pay anyone up front. You're going to want to make sure that there are different lists and different schedules for those repairs or for those rebuilds that you're going to be doing. If someone offers to use leftover product from someone else's home to repair your home, you're probably still not going to want to do that, even though you think it's going to save you money, because those are just things that I have seen where I've run into problems now trying to assist individuals. But I think the biggest thing is make sure that someone is licensed and insured. Do not pay them up front, and document everything that you can. Make sure you keep receipts. Don't take anyone at their word, which is really hard to say sometimes, but you want to get everything in writing. And if something seems too good to be true, it probably is, even though there are so many hundreds of volunteers there right now doing things, and that's wonderful. I don't want to discourage you from taking that help, but just try to verify any assistance that's offered to you. One thing that I've noticed is so many people are asking you for your identifying information. I need your social security number. I need your date of birth. I need this. I need that. And while you've got to share that information to get things like FEMA assistance or legal assistance through AppalReD, because I know that we require that at Kentucky Legal Aid, you want to be careful about who you're giving your information to. And one thing you may want to do is go ahead and just call and place a temporary freeze on your credit. That way, if your information does get out or into the wrong hands, you've got that freeze on there and no one can try to seek benefits or seek any type of loans or credit without your authorization, because scammers and people aren't nice right now. They don't they're not taking into consideration all that you're going through. So those are just some additional tips that I have on how to protect yourself and to avoid being falling prey to something right now.
And to echo one thing that Katina said about kind of the, those low people who are impersonating FEMA officials in this situation, it can be somewhat chaotic if these people are going around trying to do the inspections because, cell phone service isn't reliable. A lot of the roads aren't always reliable. And so it can be confusing about who's a legit FEMA inspector versus who's not at times. But the one main thing that a lot of these scammers will say, or they're basically trying to say there's an application fee, or they somehow need cash from you so that they can do their job as, FEMA. And if no one from FEMA is going to ask you for cash. So again, that's usually the main telltale sign in these situations. But again, if someone's asking you for cash, they're not from FEMA. Now, I want to pivot a little bit. We've mostly been talking about government benefits, whether again at the federal or the state level. Now, there's also a variety of, charitable efforts that are out there. And so, there's a lot of confusion about, whether you're getting money through a GoFundMe or through, like the Foundation for Appalachian Kentucky here has been giving out some $250 payments to survivors of the flood. How does that affect people's eligibility for FEMA assistance or any other type of public assistance?
I don't want to give a blanket answer for all types of public assistance because I do a lot of public benefits work, and I am wary of giving any advice that could lead someone to having an overpayment, like in their SSI in particular, or their SNAP benefits. But when it comes to like a GoFundMe, and I think there was a good answer in here about myth versus fact that I think Sarah put in the chat. What you want to do is document what you've received and report it to FEMA if necessary, so that FEMA does not double pay you and later on down the line try to recoup those funds from you that it would, and recoup is the FEMA word for overpay. So I would just be cautious about those things, keep records, and talk to a lawyer about your specific situation if needed, because in particular, if you are receiving a lot of income from like a GoFundMe, some of them can be really quite successful at times. I would definitely talk to a lawyer if you're receiving any public benefits to make sure that you are budgeting and working on your finances in such a way that's going to preserve your eligibility for public benefits going forward. I hope that answer makes sense. I just am cautious about not overcommitting to an answer. I'm lawyerly in that way, I should say.
Yeah, but it sounds like at a basic level, if you take money, whether it's through a GoFundMe or some other charity, and you report that to FEMA, nothing bad is going to happen to you. Where you're going to get the money up front from the GoFundMe or the charity. And again, we can work out the details with FEMA later through an appeal or whatever if need be, the question of whether that's duplicating FEMA benefits or not. But you should take the help that's out there. And then, if there's any question about how that interacts with the FEMA or other benefits, we at AppalReD or other folks will be there to help you with that.
Yeah.
Later on.
Cross that bridge when you come to it. And I really do hope that people are getting the help that they need.
One thing when we were talking about FEMA, one thing that I should have discussed earlier and I forgot about, are there any downsides to people for applying for FEMA assistance?
So FEMA obviously is there to help, but if there are any downsides, I think it would just be paperwork. There's so much paperwork. but the benefits outweigh that. So if you receive FEMA benefits, it outweighs that. And a lot of times there are denials. Like, I'm not even going to sugarcoat that. You're likely to be denied. And I've heard from other people that I've talked to that FEMA sees this as a conversation starter. So if you get a denial, it's not as if that's the be all end all. It's just the way to start the conversation to say, tell us why you need this money. Show us through your documents why you need this money. And so it's a lot of paperwork. And when you're dealing with so many other things, especially right now in the immediate aftermath of such a disaster, the last thing you want to do is go digging through boxes in your home if you finally are able to get back to it to look for a deed or to look for some type of proof that you lived at this place, a bill with your name on it. But at the end of the day, the benefit of receiving FEMA, if you qualify, far outweighs the paperwork that you're going to have to do.
And again, you all mostly dealt with the tornado situation out there. I do think that there's, with the flood situation, there are times that if you take individual assistance for a flood-related disaster, that FEMA can then expect you to start carrying flood insurance on that property going forward. But my understanding on this is that if you end up not being able to afford that flood insurance going forward, the consequence of that is not that FEMA takes your property. It's not that FEMA takes back the money that it paid you for this, immediate need right now. Instead, it just means if there were to be another flood, you wouldn't be able to get individual assistance on that. Or if you sell your house to someone else, the future property owners wouldn't be able to get that. So, there can be some, requirements going forward in a flood situation, but the consequence is not that anyone loses their property, is not that people's bank accounts get seized or tax returns get seized or anything like that. It just means that the same assistance might not be available in the future. So again, in my view, in terms of the various carrots and sticks that FEMA has in its disposal, this is very heavy on the carrot end and very light on the stick end of things. But I did want to mention that a lot of people have some experience with this from past floods in the area, and there is some reality to that, but the idea that FEMA is going to take people's property is just a myth that's out there. Going back to kind of the idea of various charities that are out there. So there's this fund that was set up through I think it's mostly through the governor's office, that they call the Team Western Kentucky Tornado Relief Fund. And there's a similar Team Eastern Kentucky Flood Relief Fund. That Western Kentucky Fund, I think, ended up getting about $52 million in donations, which is a really impressive number. And again, I'm not sure exactly where things are right now with the similar East Kentucky one, but again, it's going to be a big 7 or 8 digit number at the end. What did the state end up doing with that money in Western Kentucky? And what should people in Eastern Kentucky be thinking about now to make it more likely that they might qualify for something similar in this region?
We work at Kentucky Legal Aid, so I'll just say as a little disclaimer, I can't speak on behalf of exactly what the state has done to disperse those funds, but I'll say this. One thing to set yourself up for potentially qualifying for some of the relief would be to apply for FEMA. So I think that during the disaster that we experienced, I think that the state was pretty clear about this communication, but they are going to be looking at who applied for FEMA to help them define who was impacted by the disaster. So I think Kristy hit on this already, but another important reason to go through the FEMA application process, even if you are denied because you have other assistance, would be to set yourself up for falling into the universe of people that the state is looking at to disperse these funds. So that's how I would consider setting yourself up for the potential of getting help from there. And then what we have seen happen, and again, some of this has just been through news media and what we know our friends, coworkers and loved ones have received is, and in Western Kentucky, that fund helped to help the families bury the loved ones who were lost in the tornadoes. They also gave money to folks who had insurance deductibles that they had to pay out of pocket. So that was a large amount of money that went out to a very large swath of people who had, damage to their homes. And then it's also my understanding that money went to nonprofits that are like Habitat for Humanity is one example in Western Kentucky, that are rebuilding and building new homes for folks that were left homeless or lost their housing in the tornadoes. And then I believe, and I'm not certain about this, but there are other funds that went out to help people with just unmet needs and essentials. And I think the way that worked, don't hold me to this, is that later on, as needs emerged, different counties are going to create what are called long-term recovery groups. And there will be kind of, I assume, if it works anything like it did in Western Kentucky, in your area, they'll focus on getting relief out to their people, right? Because folks on the ground in Knott County, in your areas, know best what resources are there and often know who needs the help. So later on, I think that some money may have flowed in that direction to help with some individual needs. So definitely can't predict exactly what will happen this time, but I know the response has been pretty big already. And I hope that even if it takes months, I hope that people will see some help from it.
For me, the kind of basic takeaway from that is that people should apply for the various public benefits that are available, and that's also going to make it more likely that they're going to be eligible for some of these gap filling funds, later on.
Yes, that's a great recap. And the other thing that I would say, in case that wasn't clear, I might have minced my words a little bit earlier, is that those funds are not likely to reach people quickly, at least not in our experience in Western Kentucky. They kind of came later.
Oh, we've got some great questions in the comments, but before I get to those, I've got kind of just a broad question that I'm sure this can be difficult for Katina and Kristy to answer, but I mean, here we are about, I think almost to the day, 8 months out from when the tornadoes hit you all. As you all think back on the past 8 months, the road that you all have been on in the disaster response process, what advice would you generally have for people in East Kentucky who are dealing with this?
So it's going to sound like very basic advice, but I would say don't give up. It's going to be a long recovery process, and at times it's going to be challenging as you're being asked to prove things, and that's going to be exhausting as you try to send in paperwork and things like that. There's going to be some red tape, but the assistance is there. So I think one of the things that Katina and I were discussing earlier is that this is a marathon, not a sprint. It's something that's going to be ongoing. So you just have to mentally prepare yourself that, 8 months from now, for those who've been recently impacted, you're still going to be in the recovery process, but there are going to be resources there. There are going to be people there to help you. You've got your friends at AppalReD and other community agencies who are going to be there with you for this long haul, for this marathon. So just remember to reach out, seek assistance, look to your friends, look to your neighbors. Get involved in your community. I don't know if the long-term recovery groups in your counties have already started. If they have, connect with one of those long-term recovery groups so that you're involved in the recovery process, so you know what's going on in your community and what resources are available, not only for yourself, but for your friends and family and your neighbors who have been impacted as well. But the needs are still going to be there. So just be prepared that it is going to be a challenge. It is going to be a long process. There are going to be days that you want to give up and give in because everyone is just asking so much of you, but hang in there. And if you need help, even if it's just emotional support, reach out and ask for that. You will get through this. We're seeing people every day coming out on the other side of this, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I talked to someone yesterday who was in tears with all that she's still dealing with as well. So just be prepared. It's a long process, but you're not in this process alone.
All right, well, thanks. I'll go ahead and field some of the questions to you guys. And to one of them saying that there's been a problem with looters, or, I'll just even say, whether we're going to use the word looters or just more broadly, not everyone's able to be at their home. Sometimes things disappear. So will FEMA help to pay to replace items that are stolen in the aftermath of a disaster?
That's such a good question. And I actually haven't had a chance to research that separately, but I would argue that you're out of the house because it's flooded and uninhabitable. It wouldn't have been looted if you all had been there. So it's still disaster related damage and property loss because it wouldn't have happened but for the flooding. So that's the argument that I would make. I would document that it's gone, that it's lost, that somebody took it. And I don't know for certain if that's the case. And I'll also say this about looting, if that's the word. People are often, when they're taking things of value and of sentimental value, and things that are correct. Sarah just put this in the chat. So it might be that jewelry is gone, or a stereo system, or a flat screen TV. Unfortunately, that's not safe, or that's not something that's needed for safe habitation in your home. So probably FEMA wouldn't help you replace those items. But if you have renter's insurance or homeowner's insurance and something was stolen, I would advise filing a claim in hopes of getting the insurance company to cover that. So it's a tough issue. I think Sarah's comment is a good one.
Well, and this kind of gets into another issue. I mean, again, whether it's due to one of these stolen object issues or just more broadly, I mean, what do you do if your homeowners or your renter's insurance is being difficult or refusing to pay for repairs or stolen items or anything else related to the disaster?
So I think just like you appeal FEMA and you communicate with them, you do the same thing with your insurance company. So you write letters to them explaining what the need is, why you feel that something should be covered. You'll have your own estimates, your adjusters coming in there looking at things and just documenting that and giving it to them. But I would say in dealing with insurance, just in dealing with FEMA as well, it's not the last word. So always communicate with them and explain why more is needed, more funds are needed, and challenge them. Look at your policy as far as what is required, what's going to be covered. There are different types of policies as far as like cash value, replacement value, all of that. So you're going to want to look at your policy, your or your declaration page. I'm so used to saying disaster in front of everything, but it's called your declaration page. You're going to want to look at it and just see what's covered, what is not, and what the process is if you disagree with something that your insurance company is telling you.
And I'll just add that a lot of times some of those problems emerge a little later on down the line as well. And there are oftentimes attorneys that would be willing to help look at those types of issues. If you were to call AppalReD or the state, the Kentucky Bar Association, to get a referral to a lawyer that could help you with insurance issues, that would be something to consider as well if you get to an impasse with your insurance agency down the line. But I think it's a good place to have professional communications, asking for help from the insurance agency, negotiating with them, and then just call to get some legal advice if you need it down the line as well.
And that kind of touches on one of the questions that was just about what kind of help can people get from places like AppalReD Legal Aid and your all's organization out in Western Kentucky and South Central Kentucky, Kentucky Legal Aid there. I think for people that are on here through the Facebook invite, there's a list of a variety of the legal issues that we anticipate helping people with that are flood related. But maybe just to illustrate some of that further, in your all's experience out there in Western Kentucky, what are some of the kinds of legal issues that people came to you all with and that you were able to help people with?
So I think initially it's kind of coming in waves. As Katina said earlier, there are some issues that arise later on. So initially, I think we were helping a lot of people with FEMA appeals, of replacement of documents such as birth certificates, pointing them in the direction of where to get that birth certificates, IDs, how to get those things. And then now the issues that I'm seeing the most are dealing with insurance companies, contractors who have walked away from jobs or didn't complete work like they were supposed to do, or someone paying someone in advance for work that never got completed. So those are the kind of the hot button issues that I'm dealing with right now. In addition to those FEMA appeals, we're still because FEMA appeals, you have 60 days from the date of the denial letter, or from the letter that you disagree with the amount that you may receive. And so that can almost go on indefinitely. Sometimes it feels like they've been asking for things, so you appeal. They ask for something else, so you appeal. So we are still in that process of dealing with some FEMA appeals as well. But the wave that I'm seeing right now is just dealing with insurance issues, or contractors, or people who may have still been appealing a denial of some type of disaster unemployment.
And then, there's a lot of people that are facing some housing instability right now. From your all's experience, I know you all might not necessarily know exactly where the Red Cross is set up in Eastern Kentucky, or exactly where the various state parks are that might be available. But broadly speaking, for people that, are facing housing problems related to the disaster, how did that work in Western Kentucky, and what advice would you have for people who are trying to find a new place?
Oh, I know it didn't work great for everybody, and I know there are still folks who are really struggling. But I think, again, it was good that at our DRCs, a lot of agencies came together, and DRC stands for Disaster Response Center. So there, folks were able to apply for Red Cross assistance. And in our area, I know Bowling Green is one of our bigger cities in Kentucky. There were hotels that were able to put some people up. And that may or may not be available due to the extent of the damage and just the resources available in your counties. But I would get in touch. I would recommend just trying to seek assistance from whatever resources are there. A lot of churches and nonprofit organizations also really rose to the occasion in Western Kentucky and helped people find housing. So I would do that as well. Also in Western Kentucky, we had certain areas where, affordable housing was wiped out in the tornado. So that's a place where we continue. I don't mean to sound like a downer, but we continue to have those issues. I will say though, we're building in Bowling Green multiple habitat homes for folks who, including folks who lost their places in the tornado. So help is coming, but I think it's often just a really difficult time for months afterwards. And hopefully Red Cross is there to help.
Great. Well, I want to thank both of you all for your time and sharing your experience and passing on some knowledge to my neighbors here in Eastern Kentucky who are working their way through this. And again, I want to emphasize that we here at AppalReD Legal Aid, we want to help people with any legal issues you might have related to the flooding here. That number again is 844-478-0099. And we view the term legal issues broadly. So again, if you get any sort of FEMA denial, if you have some sort of issue about any of the types of things we're talking about, reach out to us, and we want to be part of the solution as we go through this long process of rebuilding in our region, just like they're still working through that out in Western Kentucky. Katina or Kristy, do you all have any closing thoughts before we close this out?
So I just want to say thank you so much for having us, Evan, and letting us share our information that we have from our experiences here in Western Kentucky. Our hearts do go out to you folks in Eastern Kentucky. We're always happy to communicate with AppalReD and offer whatever assistance we can. If you've had people who've moved to Western Kentucky after being displaced in Eastern Kentucky, they can also reach out to our agency as well, and we'll be glad to assist. But again, our hearts go out to you, and we're here to help in any way that we can.
And I'll just say ditto to that. Thanks, Evan. Thanks, AppalReD.
All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Legal aid provides assistance to people who don't have the money to hire an attorney to help them present their case. When we recite the Pledge of Allegiance, we end with, "and justice for all." And that's what legal aid does. Legal aid helps make that promise a reality in the United States, so that justice is for all and not just for the few who can afford it.
There's no way in the world I could have afforded to get legal representation if I had to pay. And so, you know, when you get the type of representation that I got, and it's a nonprofit organization, I don't really know if there's any words that can describe how much that means to a woman coming out of an abusive relationship with 2 children. You know, can you really put a price on your and your children's safety? And so I'm just really grateful.
She had filed this domestic violence petition alleging that her now ex-husband had followed her state to state. And so she had moved to Kentucky for a support system, and he showed up randomly. And that's when she became terrified because of the history of domestic violence.
I've had to go to court many times by myself, and the anxiety and the paranoia and just the physical illness that you feel, terrified that you step. No one should ever have to go into a courtroom without representation. No one. We don't know all the legal mumbo jumbo. There's times when I was in court with her where we get out of court and I was like, what? And she's had to explain to me, you know, what was said, because when you get into all that legal talk, for someone like me, you're speaking alien.
I feel like it makes the community better because we're able to go to court and hold people accountable and ensure that the justice system is a little more fair.
I mean, I remember after I sat down with her for the first time and just did a consult, I cried for about an hour in my car down the road. Because it was, I don't want to get emotional. It was the first time somebody cared. It was the first time I had like a beacon of hope.
You are entitled to an attorney in criminal cases. Unfortunately, that does not spread to civil cases. So it can be very scary for someone to encounter one of these lawsuits and know that they have no right to counsel.
My husband ended up having emergency heart surgery, and they was not sure if he would survive or not. So I ended up halfway through my mortgage, and then the mortgage company decided that I would not re-qualify for the balance of my mortgage. So I started making phone calls to get help to not lose my home. This was my inheritance, was this piece of property. I feel like it's my heritage, and they were going to take it away from me. It doesn't give them a right, because they have more money than me, to come after me. And people don't have a recourse. People feel that I did not feel that I had a recourse at the time. I could not afford to pay thousands of dollars out an attorney. I'm trying to save my house. If I can't pay the house, I can't pay a big high-dollar attorney bill. So then we started a bankruptcy proceeding, which stopped them from coming. In the meantime, while I was in this proceeding, though, the mortgage company sent a person out here to my home while my husband still had stitches in his chest to put a lock on the house. And I did not even have a court order. And I said, get off my property. When my grown children stepped up and helped, and if we hadn't had them, I couldn't have made it by myself. Between them and AppalReD, the good Lord above, that's what saved us.
My 21st birthday, I landed on Eglin Air Force Base. So I served 4 years active duty there on Eglin. I traveled all over the United States, and I got to do one tour in Saudi, 129 days. I don't particularly care for that one, but it gave me experience. In 1999, I had my son, and I decided to not renew my contract with the Air Force, and so in December of 1999, I got out, came back home. I had to have a surgery, and so I had to take some time off work and couldn't do a whole lot there for a while, so I got behind on financial matters, the Jeep being one. Actually, it was 14 days past the due date, and he took my vehicle. I called the police, first of all, and then as they were talking to me, and they said, well, is it financed? And I said, well, yeah, but I mean, it's not 30 days late. He agreed to take my payment, and nowhere in my imagination did I think that he had took my car. So they checked into it, and sure enough, it had been repossessed illegally.
When I talked to the man who owned the car dealership, I didn't say anything to him really other than this is the law.
She was something, let me tell you. She didn't let him mow her or plow over her like he did me.
So I'm always happy to sometimes explain the law to a car dealer if I need to, and that day I think he heard me loud and clear, so we were glad.
The day we signed the contract and I drove off in my Jeep, it was like, I know it's not the most beautiful vehicle, but to me it is, because it was a battle getting it back. I only have 2 more payments. I will have the title free and clear on my Jeep, which is wonderful to me.
The need for our services in our community is overwhelming, and unfortunately, based on the resources that we have, it's not uncommon that we have to turn people away for services.
People go into court, face the loss of their home, maybe the loss of income, the loss of custody of a child, maybe the loss of health coverage, any variety of very important and life-changing interests that are at stake. And anybody with money would never face those kinds of issues without an attorney. One of the things that drew me to legal aid was the opportunity to work for the powerless, for the forgotten, for those who have no one else to stand with them. And we at Legal Aid, we are there to stand with those people who have no one else. And I continue after 20 years of doing this to be so proud to be a part of this legal aid community that does so much every day for people when they face these kinds of problems without lawyers.